Okay, welcome to another edition of Hitting Buckets. I'm your host, Scott Mader, and with me as always, Ryan Marchand. Ryan, how are you doing?
Doing great, Scott. How are you tonight?
Not bad. So that third face you see, we have our second guest for the podcast down there is the world famous Andy Lack. Andy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Anytime for you guys. I know you guys have been listening to me for a while and supporting my podcast from some of the earlier days. So, of course, I'm happy to be here. Xander won a gold medal. Let's go.
Exactly. I tried to pick some things up there. I threw in the big Knicks fan thing. I don't know if that's a good thing, but just decided to fire that in.
It's getting better. Yeah, it's getting better. It wasn't for a while, but it's getting a little bit better now.
Yeah, I know you win one playoff game at MSG and you're back.
Oh, totally. Totally. It's all we need. It's all we need.
All right, on to golf. Ryan, I'm going to let you take this away. I know you've been talking about Xander for a while here, so let's recap quickly what just happened at the Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, like you guys said, we're super excited to have Andy here. We've been listening to Andy well before it was cool to listen to Andy. So we're super happy to see all the success you're having. I actually kind of found Andy on Twitter just kind of through our mutual man crush on Xander. Right? It's easy to find a lot of Xander haters out there on the Twitter machine because they're always complaining about how he's always got the sub 20 numbers for a guy who hasn't won in 2.5 years. I don't know why they can't wrap their heads around the outright numbers directly related to the top 5, top 10 number 2, right? And you could win a lot of money betting the last 2.5 years of Xander top 10. So he always shows up at the big tournaments. Was super excited to see him pull this through. I really hope a win like this can catapult him into contending in the majors next year. So what do you think, Andy? What did you think about the tournament? What did you think about the Olympics? And ultimately, Xander taking home the gold there.
The big takeaway for me is that I actually started the week not even sure if I was going to do any content, not even sure if I was going to do any podcasts, not even sure if I was going to bet it. And I didn't want Xander to win because I knew that if Xander won, then people would just use it as another excuse to knock him. It's kind of like the thing that you run into with college football teams sometimes where they get to the title game and they play Alabama and they get crushed 45-0. And it's like, well, you probably would have just been better like playing in the Rose Bowl and winning that. And that's the thing that happens with Xander is it's like he wins these tournaments that people want to discredit, or he finishes second a whole lot. And it's like, this was just going to be another excuse for if Xander wins. Oh, of course, Xander won the Olympic gold medal that no one cares about. But I think if you watch it and you listen to the quotes and you hear these guys, there's no takeaway that you can have other than this really matters. And it's a big deal. And these guys care about it. And it's going to keep mattering every single year. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger once we have a larger sample size. And I think Xander's win is going to age like a fine wine.
So, Andy, did you stay up and watch the final round on Saturday night?
Of course.
So,
of course.
Tell me this then. Watching him on 18 hit that drive into the rough, knowing he had to pitch it out, would you compare it at 8 out of 10 compared to maybe a US Open round 4, 6 out of 10? Like, how close were you to that major type feeling then?
I'm not going to people are going to kill me if I say that this was anything like a major. I think the course was way too easy for it to be compared like a major. But what I will say is that my good fellow Canadian, by the way, my good buddy, Eric Patterson, who was on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, he tweeted something like, I don't care what you guys say, watching how these players interact and watching what they're saying, to them, it feels major-esque. Maybe not like a major, but major-esque. Okay. And so to me, I thought that this was huge for Xander. And I thought that it was a massively important stepping stone in his career. And yes, to a long-winded way of answering your question, like I was really nervous I was nervous a lot of times during that round. I was really nervous on 18 too, because if Xander ended up losing that to Rory Sabatini, I think I probably would have had to go into hiding. I think I probably would have had to delete my Twitter account and just take like a really long break from any public anything. So I'm so happy that he got it done. So happy for the team. Shout out Maya and Austin and Ross and Ping Yi, and of course Stefan, who his Olympics dreams ended by a drunk driver, and now he finally gets to fulfill the Olympic dreams that he had as a German decathlon athlete in the 70s. It's a great story. I'm super happy for him. I hope it's the first of many good things in his career to come.
All right. Well, let's get on to the next event. I can tell when we hooked up with you a couple of weeks ago, we never thought we'd be talking 10 minutes about the Olympics and Xander, but here we are. And to wrap it up, my thoughts, I'm all in on the Olympics. I was skeptical at first, but
how can you not be?
Once you put a little wager down and you watch them play, and it's a tight field, and looking ahead, like obviously in France is going to be nice, but Olympics at Riviera, like that's going to be another major that year. I can't wait for that tournament. But let's go on to the next one. We're talking WGC St Jude Classic in Memphis. Andy, this is why we tune in, listen to you Sunday nights or Monday mornings to get ready for our next round of betting. Tell us a little bit about the course these guys are going to be playing this week.
Sure. So TPC Southwind is the host course. It's been the host course since 1989. It's a par 70 measuring 7,244 yards. 8 of the holes have water hazards, so there's a lot of water on this course. Bermuda grass greens, Zoysia fairways, very small greens. Just to give you guys like totally in a vacuum, what I think is going to be really important here is I think mid to short iron play is going to be huge. Like 67% of the approach shots come from between 125 to 200 yards. That sounds like a really big range, but in reality, you're really just trying to hone in on who is the best in the world with a gap wedge to a 7 or 8 iron in your hand. And the guys who have been the best at that over a very large sample size, we have to put Colin Morikawa aside because he's just completely lapped everyone and everything. But guys like Brooks Koepka, guys like Justin Thomas, guys like Dustin Johnson, even over a very large sample size, guys like Daniel Berger, those guys are all so deadly with their scoring clubs. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they have played well at TPC Southwind because of that.
All right. So you hit on a few of the key metrics that you're looking at here. You mentioned a few guys with the short irons. Who else do you have in mind when it comes to leans for this?
At the top of the board?
At the top of the board, yeah.
So I at first when I was writing my Rotoballer article on, I always write that on like Saturday before the odds come out or before the DFS pricing comes out. Brooks I don't think that people should overthink this one with Brooks. I think that he is where he should be. This is a great Brooks spot. And I don't begrudge or fault anyone for betting Brooks at 12-1. Me and my buddies were joking about like Brooks as a single bullet week. I think there's merit to that. And I'm not a favorites guy, but I think there's a very good chance that Brooks is going to have himself a week. For me, I found myself gravitating to a 20 on DJ because I just look at this situation and I say, okay, how is this any different than what we saw from Rory at Quail Hollow, where you get a player who's not in great recent form. So some people are a little gun shy on him, and that's why you see the odds start to drift. But we're still talking about Dustin Johnson in a field of 66 players at a course that he's won at twice, and he's 20-1 now. Like he was 12-1 and 14-1 still in big fields and in majors and stuff. And he's got to beat 65 guys now at a course that he's already won twice at. I think that this is an opportunity for DJ, and he's probably going to be the first name that I go to.
Okay, I want to stick to the top of the board here, probably go over each guy, but I want to group these guys in together. The guys traveling from Tokyo. So I'm talking Xander coming off the gold,
Mhm.
Morikawa with obviously talking about his iron play, Rory, and JT. Either both Ryan, Andy, both kind of tackle this quick. Do we think it's worth fading these guys based solely on the emotional toll the Olympics was, the travel? Are we fading the guys traveling from the Olympics this week?
I
Go
don't.
ahead, Ryan.
For me, I am just because, like Andy touched on a few things there. There's three guys I like to bet on. We know Xander's one. Unfortunately, Matthew Wolf is another for my wallet, and the last guy's always Brooks. But the dilemma I have with him is the number and trying to get there. He does love this course, and has a very good track record here. I wasn't ready for you to say DJ. I didn't hear you say DJ earlier today. So he was the other guy I was juggling with. That number's just so good. He's got a great course history here. So for me, I think at the top of the board, those are going to be the two guys that I land on. I got to pick one of them. But yeah, I think the travel to Tokyo was enough for me to keep away from like guys like Mito and Vegas, who ended up making me look stupid that way. But I think coming back after that long kind of grind that the Olympics was, I think I'm going to be off those guys.
Yeah, I think it's a big deal. I think it's something that you need to factor. I really like Justin Thomas this week. He showed me a lot with the irons, and I think if I'm choosing between Justin Thomas and DJ, and the deal breaker is one of them is to do a 13-hour time difference, I think that's the legitimate reason to pivot to one of the guys. I'm not going to completely avoid them at all costs. There actually is one guy that I am betting that played in Tokyo, but it's a real thing. And I think if you're close with somebody, if you're deciding between one or two names at similar prices, I think you probably are going to want to go with the guy that isn't traveling from the Olympics, just because it's Tokyo. Like it's a, that's a big ask for some of these guys.
Yeah, the reason why I bring it up is I've listened to a few things today, seen some stuff on Twitter, and maybe you guys are seeing other things, but I don't see anyone kind of saying Rory's name. And when I listened to you, I saw the Quail Hollow comp. I saw the way Rory kind of seemed rejuvenated over there. So I kind of wanted to go Rory this week, and kind of felt like it would be a little zag when people are zigging and I wouldn't be playing the same guys, everyone. Am I crazy? Like quickly, I don't want to talk about Rory too long, but do you guys, Andy especially, have you heard anyone playing Rory this week?
Yeah, I like Rory. I think you're onto something, man. I got nothing against Rory. The guest that I just had on my podcast that I recorded, it won't be out till tomorrow, but Rob, he's just really, really smart DFS guy, and he's betting Rory. And I'm not a giant narrative guy, but I think that you're on to something with the rejuvenation. I think something kind of happened with Rory at the Olympics where he did this 180 where he wasn't excited about it. And then he got there and suddenly has all these quotes about how he's looking forward to Paris. And this was just such a special experience for him. Maybe that was what he needed. Maybe that was what he needed to get him kind of going again. So I like Rory a lot. I'm probably going to go DJ, and I just can't bet them all, but I like Rory. I think that's a very sound option. And especially in DraftKings too, if he's a guy that not a lot of people are going to, I'll definitely be there.
Okay, Ryan, I'm going to cue this one up for you, but I'm going to give you two guys, and then we'll move to the mid-rangers. But one guy you talked about, Andy, Spieth, also a guy on my radar. Really good finish at the Open. And then Ryan, I know you want to talk about Louis Oosthuizen. So tell me why you like Louis O, and then throw a little Spieth thought in there while you're explaining why you're picking Louis.
All right. So yeah, I haven't bet Louis yet this year. To be honest, I don't even like watching him golf, but like over the last 24 rounds, he's third in strokes gained approach, third in greens and regulation gained, and he's first in bogey avoidance. So in his last 8 starts, he's finished second 4 times and third once. So he comfortably leads the PGA Tour in strokes gained putting this season. I mean, he's your guy, Kirshner's boy, you know. I don't know. I've never played him before, but I think I'm going to play Louis this week. I think everything lines up for him to have a good week. And when it comes to Spieth, he's just one of those guys that, like you said, you can't play everyone, but it's almost like we'll get to the turn on Thursday and you're already regretting not playing Spieth, right? He's got that intangible thing where he just shows up and he can get himself out of anything. He's fun to watch. He's fun to cheer for. That being said, I won't be on Spieth this week, but I can't say that anyone else shouldn't be. That's for sure.
Yeah, the top of the board's so tough. And with the WGC, I guess I'm kind of treating it like a major where I just want guys on the top of the board on my card, but you obviously can't take them all. So I'm not giving away who I'm taking. I just like to talk through what we think. But Andy, let's go to the next tier of guys. Let's go in more to the mid-range, 25 to 40, 45 range. I'm going to maybe put you on the spot here, but you got anyone kind of sticks out in that range?
Yeah, I got two guys, and I always I never bet this guy. I really don't. I think this may be the first time I'm betting him all season, despite my good friend that I talk golf with almost every day, Jeff Feinberg, being completely enamored with him. But I'm in on Hovland this week, and I think this is the right time for him. And I almost bet him last week, and I didn't. But I know he played in Tokyo. I get that, but I just think, and this kind of dovetails what we were saying a little bit with Rory, where some of these young guys, they don't think about any of this stuff. And there's some great Morikawa quotes on this too, where they just show up to these places and they just kind of ball, and kind of that innocence and that almost ignorance, it's still there with them, where someone like Rory, who's seasoned and has some miles under his belt and has a family and a couple kids, and he's a little bit more of a corporation and he has some different priorities in life. Things change and it gets a little bit harder. And maybe that flight to Tokyo, it's a little bit more on your plate when you've got a family too, and 8 different business deals. I think Hovland is just in go zone right now. And I love the way that he finished at the Olympics. He finished eagle birdie to shoot a 64 on Sunday. He checks all the boxes for me, ball striking and model wise. I mean, I could give you guys a million stats about his ball striking, but I think it's a good spot for him. I think 25-1 is fair. And I'm going in with Hovland this week.
Man, that's
nice. Scott's a big Hovland fan too.
I wasn't going to play him this week, and now how can I have a guest on my pod recommend my favorite player and not have a piece of it? So now I'm completely torn. But on Hovland, I think this will set you up nicely, Ryan, when we're talking about this range and talking about young golfers who are needing to break through with that big win. I know Hovland has a few wins, 2 in the PGA, but not on American soil. And he's got that win recently in Germany. So I think he needs a WGC type win, or major, even better. I'm going to cue you up for the other guy in this range who's also playing really well in these big events, the WGCs, the majors. When he doesn't play well in these other events, Ryan, Hovland, Andy thinks can win. Scotty Scheffler. Obviously, I think you like him. What do you think of his chances this weekend?
Yeah, I like Scheffler this week too. Like you said, he just shows up at the big events. He's one of we always talk about the Morikawas and the Hovlands, and my guy Wolf used to get grouped in there, but he doesn't anymore. But Scheffler's right in there with him. I mean, he might not look as young as them, but yeah, I think he might even be younger, right? So he's just one of those guys. He's still looking for his first win on the tour. And it's funny to say, but I think it's going to come at a big event rather than one of those, birdie fest kind of everyone's involved events. So I think he's got a real chance this week. He's trending really good. And another guy's Berger too, another young guy who's got a good track record here. So I was kind of torn between the two of them, and I think in this range I'm gonna land on Scheffler.
Yeah, I thought Scheffler before everything, before I do any look at odds, any research. So about Thursday, Friday last week, I thought I'd land on Scheffler. I was kind of hoping for 36, 38. I guess that was wishful thinking, as I'm seeing him at 29 now. But I could say now I have a big decision between Scheffler and Hovland. Again, not giving away anything because some of the listeners on here are important listeners in my family snake draft, so I'm not giving away any hints that I'm going to be playing in a couple of days. But Andy, back to you. We'll kind of finish off this mid-range and kind of transition into longer odds. You know, I'm having a hard time pulling the trigger on anyone long here, but so if you have any mid-range guys, kind of finish up and then help me out. Anyone with value, 80 or above in this field, in this 66 man field.
Well, I think you spoke to something really important. I'm betting Scheffler, by the way, too. I'm betting Scheffler and Hovland. I think this is just a hello world moment for one of these guys. I think it's time. But as you mentioned, I think if there's any a week to go a little bit heavier at the top, and I don't know how you guys structure your outright cards. I'm a guy that I don't like to bet more than 5 outrights a week, and I do a pretty small unit on them, and the majority of my exposure is through like top 40 bets and matchups and stuff like that. I think that's where you can really make money week to week on a golf betting. But I think this is a good week to kind of structure your card more towards the favorites, because I don't have all of the names out in front of me, but if you look at the guys who have won WGCs, it's all really good players. I think Russell Knox won a WGC in China, and that is like the one outlier in the last 10 years where it wasn't a big name player that has won one of these WGCs. So it's tough with the longer shots. I'll tell you the one guy that I am eyeing, Sergio Garcia, is going to be really popular. I get the Sergio thing. That makes sense. You have to believe that the putter will come around. But I think that Justin Rose I think that he could be a problem this week. I think that no one's going to play him and no one's going to talk about him, and he's not on anyone's radar, and he's going to be 2% in DFS, but it's go time if he wants to be considered a guy. Like, he's not qualified for the FedEx Cup. He's not going to get picked for the Ryder Cup, and maybe he just does suck. And that is what it is. And he's just not going to be one of those guys anymore. But I like to believe that Rose at 42 years old has a little bit of fight in him. And the stats aren't great, but I think the motivation is there. And I think especially in DraftKings, if 15% are playing Sergio and 1% is Rose, I think I would pivot in that situation and maybe toss something on him at 80-1.
So what I'm hearing there, in a field like this, a tournament like this, because you said you like to play a lot of top 40s, DFS, when you're looking 80-1, 100-1 guys, maybe if you're allotting 10% of your outrights, just throw it all up to the top guys. And then the guys you're talking about, it's more on your fantasy plays and your top 40 plays. It's just, would you say you're almost wasting that 10% of your outright budget on those guys and just throw a little more on Brooks, a little more on DJ?
I think this is a week where it makes sense. Yeah. Usually I do a thing where it's like, I bet 5 guys and like one guy is below 25-1 and the next guy is between like 25 and 40. And then you go up and 40 and 60. And I kind of like to structure it very perfectly. I think with the WGC, like I'm going Dustin 20, Hovland 25, Scheffler 31. I don't know if I'm going to have anyone else this week. Maybe something small on Rose, but I think that's a very admirable way to do it. Like I mentioned, like I don't begrudge anyone for betting Brooks and maybe DJ or one more guy and calling it a day. I think with the WGCs, you guarantee the best players 4 rounds and the cream will rise to the top.
Okay, Ryan, before we move on to some quick hitter rapid fires, you got any long shots we didn't respect? I know you somehow managed to slip Matt Wolf's name twice into the podcast. You're really good at doing that. You playing him this week?
I play Matthew Wolf every week just in case in case he comes from behind and does something crazy and I miss it. I wouldn't be able to live with myself. So I'll have a little sprinkle on him. He mentioned Sergio, Andy. I mean, he lapped the field at 3M tee to green, but The guy just, if he catches a hot putter, he could be a good guy. Another guy at 81 I like is Sam Burns. He's shown that he can get birdies in bunches, so he can hang with the big boys. Another young guy that at 81-1 is worth a little bit of a toss to him. But other than that, I'm doing the same thing. I got Louis and Scheffler, and then I'm deciding between Brooks and DJ. So
Okay, I'm going to do a little rapid fire here, but I always do this. I have notes of guys I want to hit on, and then we miss them, which is funny because some podcasts I listen to, they talk about this guy 75% of the podcast, and Ryan and I always seem to never talk about him. So Andy, quickly, 30 seconds, Bryson DeChambeau.
It's a pass for me. I understand it. I understand the drift of his odds. He hasn't played well here. I don't think it's a great spot for him. I think driver will be out of his hands, and he hasn't been playing great golf. So I'll go elsewhere.
Ryan, I know you're a pass, so you don't even have to bother to answer. Last one, and this is for the family. Phil Mickelson. He has good course history. I think he's 90-1. Andy, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I know you guys had John on the other week, and I know he likes Phil. I don't know, guys. I'm not sold. He had one really, really good tournament, and it kind of caught lightning in a bottle at the PGA. And if you look at all of his numbers from everything else, he's been a 150 to 200 to 1 golfer. So I think I'm going to pass on Phil. I understand the course history aspect, but I think if you're going to get down to that range, there are guys that are just playing a lot better that I would maybe trust a little bit more.
Are you talking about Matthew Wolff?
I've got a ton of stuff on Matthew Wolff. If we want to do Wolff, like I'll keep it brief, but you guys have listened before. I've met Matthew Wolff. My best friend plays at his course in Oak Tree. So I get some Wolff info all the time, anytime he's on the range. And my buddy knows his caddy really well. Wolff's a stud. Wolff is an absolute stud. I'm high on him long term. He's a good guy. He's he's a genuinely nice kid. I ran into him again at Torrey. So I love Wolff. I haven't looked a lot at him this week because I don't know if he's fully there yet, but I'm high on him long term.
So if you were to draft 28 guys in a family snake draft, is Matt Wolff going to be one of the 28 drafted, or should he be?
Well, what are the parameters? Are we talking about upside here or safety? Because I think upside, yeah. Wolff can shoot a 63 and hold the 36 hole lead. That wouldn't surprise me, but he can also shoot a 78. So, I mean, what are the parameters?
Well, the parameters are in our format. Missing a cut just buries your team. So Wolff is not the ideal guy for the cut
Except
events.
this week, there's no cut. There's no cut. So
exactly. Yeah. So this is the week to take a chance on Matt Wolff in your super important family snake draft that you do.
I would say, yeah, I think he's playable. I mean, the no cut thing, like if the guy shoots 75 every single day, the no cut, it's like missing the cut. It's worse. I mean, yes, but I think people in general overrate the no cut thing with like DraftKings, where it's like, let's just take a shot because they're guaranteed 4 rounds. Well, if they shoot 74 all day, you're losing. So it doesn't. Yeah, I think Wolff makes some sense here. With 28 guys, that means he's got to be field average. Yeah, I think that's fair.
I'm so excited that this turned into a Matthew Wolff.
Yeah, no, Ryan does this every time. Somehow, Matt Wolff.
Listen, if CT Pan can shoot a 74 and come back and win a bronze medal, Matthew Wolff can win this weekend. All right.
All right, boys. We're running out of time, so we're going to do some quick hitters here. Women's Olympics. I'm going to go first. Brooke Henderson, Patty T. Ryan, give me 1 or 2 names for gold.
I'm going with Nasa Hitoki. She won her last start quite easily here 3 weeks ago. She's back home, and Hideki showed how cozy he looked back in Japan. So I'm hoping she feels the same. And then someone I always bet, Ariya Jutanugarn. I consider her much like Xander for the women. She's just one of the most complete games on tour. Hasn't been in the best form, but she did have a victory a couple weeks ago with her sister. So, and pretty strong showing in the last major. So I like her at 19-1.
I'll go Danielle King. I like Danielle King. Once we get to the Barracuda, I'm playing the double. But I think it's going to be
Keep
a
it
big
going.
week. It's going to be a good week for the McNeely family and their fortune.
Okay, so yeah, you got McNeely at the CUDA and Kang at gold medal.
I'm playing the double. Yeah.
Nice.
The rich get richer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Their house on Pebble is so absurd, guys. I mean, it's just, I got to play Pebble in September for my birthday with my dad, and the caddy was pointing out all the houses, and it's like the guy who owns the Warriors, Joe Lakeup, and Chuck Schwab, and then he's like, yeah, that's Scott McNeely's house right there. That's where Mav McNeely grew up. It's like right on the 11th hole on the ocean.
nice. Ryan, what do you got for the Barracuda? Quickly.
I'm playing two guys I always bet, Patrick Rogers and Aaron Wise. I think I've seen them both in the kind of like the 26 to 35 range. Both have the same problem Sergio has, that they can't putt. So hopefully they can find a hot putter. I know Rogers has a little bit extra to play for. I think he's coming here ranked 126, so he wants to get in under that 125. So I think he's going to be my big dart. I think Patrick Rogers.
Nice. All right, man. Andy, thanks for coming on, man. It was a pleasure. It's always nice talking to guys you follow on Twitter, people you listen to, their podcasts. Great info. So appreciate it.
Absolutely, guys. Anytime for you guys. That was really fun. And let's go Wolf. We got so many good vibes with the Xander win. It's like we got to carry it over.
All right, guys. All right. Well, we'll check our picks out on Twitter. Hopefully we got some winners, and definitely check out Andy's podcast, Pick the Pup, and follow him on Twitter.